We've talked a lot about activism and revolution. So for Rubin Singh's talk, we started with Singh talking about how difficult a path this can be. And we continued on with Rubin Singh talking about revolutions. And heard stories of activists from Sanveer Singh to Kuldeep uncle, and what we wanted to do, so we went through those scenarios not too long ago. What we wanted to do is bring some of this together through stories of people that are here that have taken action based on their love for Guru. So when Rubin Singh yesterday, it was the greatest slide because it perfectly teed up what we're about to get into, which is 5 people that are at retreat are going to come up in a panel, and it'll be a combination of some questions we have for them already, and questions from y'all around the work that they do, why they do it, and how they do it. So, I think the thing that connected most with me from the weekend as it relates to this is when Rubin Singh talked about it being an action, right? Like love is an action versus something that's passive. And so these people have put that love into direct action, and I think it's something for us all to reflect on and say, what are, aside from what we do in Gurdwara and Kirtan Seva and these different things, how do we put the Guru's message into action by fighting for social justice or whatever your cause is, whatever your passion is? So we're going to talk about the why, the what, and the how. What cause people are passionate about, why that's their passion, and how they're putting that into action. So again, we'll introduce our 5 panelists. There's a couple questions that I have for them to get us started, and then we'll have audience questions. If there's time left, we'll do a quick exercise at the end. Well, before we get started, I wanted to play one quick video for you. And so this is one of the things. This is a video that really hit home for me, and it's one of the reasons why I've gotten involved in some of the things I have, and it's just been something that's spoken to me. So before we start the introductions.
Happy birthday to you.
Make a wish.
Granny!
Hello.
Have you done your homework?
Ada!
For a general strike.
Ready or not? Here it comes.
Violent clashes with
Live ammunition against...
Deserve to get shot.
Have a nice day, Mum.
airstrikes on rebel position.
We are going to stay.
What's happening?
Go.
Heavy fighting in Richmond.
Dad, where are we?
Rebel forces advance.
Happy birthday to you. Make a wish, darling.
I think one of the reasons that video speaks to me is because I feel often insulated from things like this. We live very privileged lives in extreme comfort, and we tend to forget about our obligation, whether it be in Sudan or in Syria, or across the globe. I often thought about our importance here, but given what's going on in Syria, the thing that strikes me is if it's not us, who is it going to be? I want to start by bringing up our 5 panelists, and then I'd start with Kuldeep Singh, if we can just come over here. So Kuldeep Uncle, as you all know, is the founder and president of SYANA, and he started Sikh youth camps in 1973. Founding chairperson of World Sikh Council, America region, served as editor of Sikh World, was vice president of the North American Akali Dal in the 1980s, served as president of Sikh Student Federation in the 1960s, and I have 3 more paragraphs of all the things he's done, but I'll pause there because you all know the amazing work he does. I'd like to also then bring up Aasees Kaur, who began her activist work 8 years ago when she realized the growing need of for the Sikh American community, especially in the South. She's been involved in work surrounding immigration and refugee rights, gender equity, education policies, and South Asian and Sikh American civil rights issues. Following last year's election, she became more involved in the political movements in the South, founding Perimeter Progressives, a grassroots org that seeks to engage and collaborate with like-minded individuals along the top end of Atlanta, and also got involved in John Ossoff's congressional campaign. And she currently works at the Sikh Coalition. Next, our lovable Puneet Singh is a PhD candidate in aerospace engineering at the University of Michigan. In December 2014, he and Jagpreet Singh went on a journey to the ruins of Loga, the capital of the first Sikh Raj, established by Banda Singh Bahadur. During their travels, their mutual passion for Sikhi and engineering led them to start creating interactive and educational products to encourage the next gen to be incentivized, innovative, and simultaneously loving the magnanimous past of our Sikh heritage. Seema Kaur is the co-founder of Aasees Food Pantry, a Southeast Michigan-based food pantry. Since its establishment in February 2015, Aasees has served healthy foods to over 400 families experiencing food insecurity. She's also been an integral part of running SYANA camps and retreats for 2 decades. And lastly, Rubin Singh has been actively involved with the Sikh community for over 20 years, primarily working with youth. Rubin regularly facilitates workshops across the country at Khalsa schools, camps, retreats, and conferences on a variety of topics from Gurmat to Sikh history to social activism. He also does outreach work with the community and regular guest speaks at local high schools on faith and tolerance. Rubin has served on the board of trustees for the Sikh Coalition, and he currently serves on the board for Nourishment Now and does community outreach work for Save a Truck. So I'd like to start, each individual up here will start with just a 3-minute introduction. And what we've asked each of them to do is talk about what they're involved in and why that's their passion, what drove them to get active in that space, and then we'll go to some questions from there. We'll start with Kuldeep Uncle.
I have been involved with the Sikh youth camps right from 1973. The first, when I arrived at in Toronto, Ontario, the first thing that we started is a speech type of competition called Bhai Joga Singh Memorial Competition. And the name Bhai Joga Singh was given because Bhai Joga Singh must have heard that he was a very devoted Sikh. He left after doing first Islam when he received the message from the Guru Singh that you should immediately come and see him. But on the way, he got distracted and tried to go to the cross street. Guru Gobind Singh Ji worked as a paradar at the residence of the cross street and tried to stop him that you are wearing the Panch Pratars, all the articles of faith you are wearing, and what you are going to do. You have listened to the Guru. You left without getting your Anand concluded. You were so much in a rush that you wanted to see your Guru right away because the call came to come. Now what you are trying to do? So that paradar not physically stopped, but standing by the door, and he was waiting till the paradar moves from there. The paradar never moved. And paradar was Guru Sahib himself in a different dress, in a different shape before. So particularly chosen that name because the Guru helps you if you get initiated by the Guru. If you are a Amritari Singh, sorry. And then the Guru is always Charan Sharan Gur Ek Penda Jai Chan Satgur Kod Penda Aage Hoye Leta. So that was the condition at that time in 1968. Very few Sikhs were in Sikh attire. Very few Sikhs were following these Sikh principles. Things are quite different today. Thank God for the camps that were organized. Thank God for all these functions that are being held by the Gurdwaras, and thank God for all the retreats and symposiums, all these things that were happening. So this Baijoga Memorial competition was initiated just to show that people that we may be very devoted, but we can go astray. So unless the Guru's palla is in your hand, you won't go anywhere. So they saved by Yoga Singh that way, and we started the competition at Tek Gurdwara, which was the first Gurdwara in Pandor. And we used to hold crossings and then competition, and then the prize distribution used to be done. That's how the camps, so-called camps, are initiated. Then the first camp in 73 was initiated, and at our residence in Madison Heights, when families, it was a families camp, not just a youth camp. Then regular youth camp started from somewhere in 78 at the Proud Lake Recreation Area, where a regular camp was held. People discouraged me not to hold it because very few people will come and very few people will register. But I was bent upon doing it to inculcate the teachings of the Gurus to the youth. That was the idea. And when I was seeing all the youth that are falling from the principles of Sikhi, that was disturbing me, because I was told by the Sikh Student Federation, which I was a member of in India, that the Guru's principles must be preserved. So, and the story that motivated me was the story of Subhaig Singh and Shahbaz. That was the biggest motivation. when at one time, you heard the story yesterday, it was told to you by Singh, but you know, I had a different aspect of it. When both were being rotated on a death beam, Singh was told that why don't you save your son at least, because I know you are a devoted Sikh, you will get killed. But save your son, he is still young. We will temporarily make him a Muslim, but when he will become 18-year-old, we will drop him at the jungle where all Sikhs live, and then he will become a Sikh. That was told to him by a friend, and he said, these words are written in Pratasik Prakash, and it says, Rak putra ko kul tuj rahe, tu kaho muhte kalma kahe. Your family will be saved, your family tree will be fresh. So why don't you save him? And tell him to say kalma. After all, kalma is a good word. There's nothing wrong with it. Why don't you tell him to put kalma? And if he says kalma, then he will become a Muslim. Then the words that Bhai Singh said at that time is very alarming and very convincing and very inspiring. And those words are, Sikhan kaj so guru hamare, Sistiyo nij san parvare, Jai karan gur kul hai gavai, Hum kul rakhe kaman badai. He said that my guru has finished his book, his family tree. He had 4 sons, Chare putra jine kuhaye, so chandi ki bhet chalaye. He has 4 sons, he has gotten rid of all the 4 sons, did not save even one when he has power to save one. So humkul rakhe kaman badai. I am just an ordinary person. Meri kul rahe ya na rahe, what difference does it make? That's what the Guru said. So to save that, the Guru has done so much sacrifice, and that motivated to teach the youth the principles of Sikhi and to bring them into the fold of Sikhi. That's one aspect. I just want to tell briefly about the retreat when we started. I got completely turned off when a retreat of the Sikhs was held in America. It was sponsored by Michelob Beer. And it was mind-boggling for me that a Sikh retreat sponsored by a Sharab Khana, that's really terrible. So we decided to start the retreat in Detroit area, and that was in 1995. Retreat for those kids who are 18 and above. And the first retreat was in this fashion, that there were no lectures. There was one person moderating, introducing the subject, and then it was a discussion. That was the first retreat in 1995. And the people who came into that retreat started other organizations also and flourished, started camps, and people from this camp started multiple other camps. I'm proud of all those camps, I'm proud of all those kids who have done a wonderful job. So that is the story of a few minutes. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Uncle. This is actually the second retreat. Uncle, this is 1996 retreat, so it's the second year we ended up doing retreat. There's some familiar faces buried in here. If you can catch them. Next, Uncle, if you could give Aasees Kaur the microphone, and she can talk a little bit about the work that she's doing, and most importantly, briefly cover the why behind the work that you do.
So the work that I am involved in is equally political and social, which for me works out really well because it helps me balance out the nitty-gritty aspect of our lives. But the reason I got involved in this work is the area and the school districts we lived in, I had heard many stories of kids that were just having a hard time. There was one student who used to wear a pink backpack to school. And the other kids at the school gave him such a hard time that he ended up taking his own life. And the school district didn't do anything. The school district knew about it, and there were many other incidents and this is a district that claims that, in its district there's 271 languages spoken. There's blah, 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 many nationalities represented. But when it was time for them to do something, they didn't. And we kept seeing time after time, incident after incident, that they weren't changing the policies. And for me, what it took was to experience all of that at a deeper, more personal level with my own younger brother. Just quickly, it just ended up being one of the worst incidents in the school district. He needed 2 surgeries to then recover from the trauma that he had gone through at school. And the environment was so hostile that kids felt the need to physically take away his identity. They cut off his hair from the back of his parka that he used to wear. We got death threats, all of our family. Kids would say that we've got a 9mm gun and blade, and don't be surprised if you get stabbed. And the schools wouldn't do anything. We exhausted all of our options, and I then started talking to, so there's 4 gurdwaras in the Metro Atlanta area. I started going to each gurdwara and I started talking to parents about what's going on, if their kid is having any issues, and there were just too many stories. And the parents didn't know what to do. The parents didn't even know it was bullying. They didn't know how to talk to their kids. And it just completely broke my heart to know that kids as young as in pre-K were being discriminated against in these, supposedly diverse areas. But I just have this soft spot for youth, and I can't see them in pain. So I got involved in that, but from there, I then started spending time with foster kids, and I do those camps. It's to reunite foster siblings who have been separated because one family can't take in all of the siblings, and just being there. We're so privileged. We have families. We've got everything we need. And these kids, I can't forget their faces. And I had this one little 7-year-old boy who just didn't even know that. So I get files on these kids and what their conditions are and what's going on in their lives and stuff like that. And he was just like, Mrs. C's, I found this baby brother, and he's got these he's got a big forehead and these white teeth, and they're so shiny. But I knew his baby brother had passed away. But I couldn't tell him that. And it got me looking deeper into those policies about how the foster system in Georgia is run, how it's run all across the country. And I try to understand and figure out how I could do my part to help these little babies just have a stronger, more stable life. And for me, it made sense to do it through a policy standpoint, because if I feel like if we can do reforms at smaller local levels, all changes local, that's what I believe, that we could not have situations like these where two brothers and sisters only get 1 week out of the year together to help build their relationships. And so I changed career paths and I studied public policy and management, and I just been involved with a lot of youth programs and just trying to empower the youth, whether it's in our own community or the communities that we live in. And when the election happened, it was very rough, and I had met with this one person from our local area, and we were like, man, we gotta get the closeted progressive and Democrats out of the closets, and we need them to just be out and about and start doing what we need to do. So we founded Perimeter Progressives, and we've been working since the election to create small local change, starting at the city council level. So now literally everybody knows who's up for election, which seat's about to be empty, what the, the filing fees and all of the logistics and stuff like that is. And that's been going pretty well so far. And then Tom Price, God, I can't even talk about him. He's just not a good person. But he got promoted to Health and Human HHS Secretary position, and John Ossoff decided to run. And just based on my own experiences with Tom Price, I knew I had to meet with Ossoff and figure out what this guy really stood for, and if he could help the other 35% of the people in his area. So we met and we talked about everything that the district hadn't been offering all the minorities in the area. Everything till now has been catered to the 65 to 70% of the majority living in the area. And for his campaign, I serve as the precinct captain, so just in charge of the canvassers in my area and things like that. If something goes wrong, just the go-to person, or just some more election-based stuff. So I want to be really hopeful for June 20th when the runoff is, and I'm just trying to do what we can at a small level, because that's how change starts. It's hard to do it big, but it's so much easier to just pick one small thing, one city council meeting to like go tell the mayor what you really think and how he shouldn't be sending out the emails that he does. And all it takes is one voice to make a difference, and that's what I'm trying to do for now. So, think of questions, and hopefully I'll be able to answer some. Thank you,
Sister. Next, Puneet Singh, if you could give your background of what you've been involved with.
First of all, I would like to say I don't feel like I deserve to be on this panel. I'm nothing compared to the people and the work that you're doing here. Why I am sitting here is because in 2014 I attended my first retreat right here in this place, and I loved it, and I made some really good friends. Some of them are here today, some of them are not that great friends, but one of the friends that I made was Singh, who was also a very passionate, nerdy Sikh person I met. And he came to India while I was there, and we went to visit the ruins of the first capital of the Sikh Raj, Logar, which was established by Banda Singh Bahadur before he captured Sirhind. And it was a very inspiring, kind of travel. We learned a lot, we talked a lot. We are both engineers, and we we both, we feel like we love the Panth as much as we think we can. And one of the things that we feel was that, as kids we learn a lot about Sikh history, we learn a lot about Gurbani, we learn Kirtan. One of the divine qualities of Akal Purukh is being Karta, being a creator. All our gurus were established cities, they were building stuff, and that is one aspect that that we as engineers were very interested in. But from our Sikhi perspective, there was nothing to fulfill that desire or fulfill that yearn to do something about using engineering or using our math engineering skills to do something for the Panth. And so we got this idea because we really liked Legos and we like toys, and they are a very good tool in teaching Sikh history and Sikh principles and Sikh values to kids, because it's a fun thing to do. And we started building these Lego kits. And our first model was what you see right here is Akal Takht. So we bought all the pieces, we did a lot of design on the computer, tried to make it as accurate as possible to the actual Akal Takht. It's the temporal, it's the highest authority of Sikhs, and it is something that is often ignored. We know more about Harmandir Sahib and everybody knows it as a golden temple, but we forget that Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji built Akal Takht and asked Sikhs to bring arms and horses there, and this was where he would hold courts, and there he would have Tali Jathas play, and that's a very important part of Sikh history that is very often conveniently forgotten. And so we decided that we'll start with that kit, and it's a huge model. I can bring it to me. It's about 20 inches. I mean, my work seems like it's nothing compared to these people. I feel really embarrassed to talk about it. I have the smaller Akal Takht here and the Taus. Should I speak about the process, or is that like?
So I think we'll get into that.
Okay. So that's it. What we really want to do is we want to give these kits out and let kids play with it and be engaged with our history. The Taus is the instrument built, designed and invented by Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji. Some say it's Guru Gobind Sahib Ji, but it's one of the gurus for sure. And it's also one of the ancient, it's one of the Gurbani Sangeet, Gurmat Sangeet instruments that's not very often seen in Gurdwaras, so this is another way to introduce kids to learn more about our Sikh artifacts and parts of our Sikh history. And I'll stop here.
So I was going to summarize at the end, but I think it's important to say now that as you can already see through the first three, there's a clear reason why we've asked these folks to be on the panel. Each and every one of them has done a lot for the Panth and is adding in their own unique way. And I think these stories are all, it's an eclectic set of activities, and so each one will resonate with each person differently here and probably inspire some sort of activism in its own right. Next, I'd like to ask Seema Kaur to talk about the work she does at Asra Food Pantry.
As you heard in the intro, I am the co-founder of Asra Food Pantry. My partner in crime is Singh behind the camera. Essentially, what drives us to do this is, I think, the most basic of Sikh principles, Varnke Chakna, and just trying to see Wairu in everyone around us, and just hopefully serve them in that way. We always, said we need to do something, we need to be productive. One day an opportunity came up, and we formed a partnership with a local food bank supplier, and we just started a food pantry. Neither of us had time to do it, but it was the time and place, and it was totally meant to be. Just some statistics that are kind of mind-blowing. In the US, 42.2 million Americans are experiencing food insecurity. And of those, 13.1 million are kids. That, like, in a developed country like America, that's, I have a lot of trouble with that. We both live in the greater Detroit area. And in our area, there are just over 200,000 kids who are food insecure. And really what that means is that their families are not, they don't have the opportunity to have nutritious and complete foods on a regular basis, which means they may cut out meals or they may turn to less nutritious and cheaper foods. The way we function, we've actually been very fortunate that our local Gurmat has given us a lot of support, and as a result we have very low overhead, so we are able to hopefully have a little more impact. But we just very simply function out of the Gurmat. We have a great set of donors that supports us monthly, and we buy government subsidized food, and we get some free food donations as well locally, and twice a month we distribute mostly shelf-stable foods to anywhere from 15 to 25 families, and that is done right at the Gurmat premises. And we are also on the brink of a new adventure where we'll be building a food truck and hopefully taking prepared foods to people who are unable to get to us. So that's just kind of a snapshot of what we're up to. Why we're doing this.
Thank you. Excellent lead-in, because there's a retreat collaboration going on here as Rubin Singh talks about his work, perhaps focused around nourishment now and Seva Truck. Rubin Singh.
Nourishment now, just like the commercial that you saw, or Save the Children a little while ago, back in 2010, a friend of mine saw a video that spoke about some of these statistics on hunger, and he called me up and said, we gotta do something about this whole hunger scenario because this problem is very solvable. And so, both of us felt strongly that food security is really a human right, and everybody should have access. And so, made some calls. We learned about some organizations that can supply dried ingredients to us. We learned about some places that can do some shipping for us, and we started an organization called Nourishment Now. 7 years later, 2 million meals later, we organize events like the one that you see down below, where we basically organize these meal packaging events where people of all ages can come together. We package meals, highly nutritious meals with very basic, simple ingredients that we store in packages, and those packages, meal packages, can be sent abroad, which we focus on areas, especially areas that are hit by natural disasters. Or we also provide to the local homeless shelters, food banks, what have you, whoever will take it. So we feel strongly about splitting what we put together with both places overseas as well as local. And so it's a completely volunteer-run organization. None of us are employees or anything like that, and we work on a sponsorship model. So a church will come to us, a PTA, a school, a Gurdwara will come to us and say, hey, we'd like to do this event, 5,000 meals, 10,000 meals, whatever. They'll sponsor the event, we'll bring our trucks out there and organize this event. What we love about it is not only just the end product and the food gets to go to places really in need, but it's also the idea of getting everyone together. I think those events themselves are very powerful. It's really bringing a sense, it creates a sense of community, people coming together, people of all different races, religions, backgrounds, to serve together. It's a real powerful experience. So I think it's a combination of the end product and the experience that we really love. The other one I was briefly mentioned is a relatively new venture that started Wasaki of last year, Seva Truck. So it's basically a free food truck in the Washington, D.C. area. And so the idea behind Seva Truck is to partner with organizations that are already doing great things, but don't necessarily have a food program, like maybe a child care after-school program, or a veteran center or what have you, places that have lots of facilities and lots of programming but just don't have anything for food. So right now it's pretty much a weekly basis that volunteers come together, take the truck out, prepare meals a little bit in advance, and then finish the preparation in the truck itself. Go out to the facility, as Seema you mentioned, and serve the food. And so it's gotten a lot of, it's a very unique concept. It hasn't existed in DC before. Everyone was scratching their heads when they were, they said, well, it's like a food truck, but how's it free, how's it a nonprofit, it's a restaurant. It just, no one knew how to deal with us when we were applying for all the papers. But it's gotten a lot of good attention, and really, we're hoping that by continuing this work, we'll be able to measure, some of the improvements that some of these other programs have that we're partnering with, and to see if the food program can ultimately help them reach their goals.
Thank you, Rubin, for saying.
I think a good place to start some of the questions is really around what you had to overcome to get started, right? So there's a couple of things at play. Many of us, and many people have had thoughts about starting something. And for you all, it took hold and you had to overcome whatever personal doubts you had or whatever challenges you had in starting what you did and pursuing it and pushing further. So, there's a couple of questions here. I'll probably ask one or two of you for each question versus going through each one, but Aasees, I think I'd love to start with you, which is, and probably more, you saw this need in with the foster children, you got involved. You saw the need with OSOF, you got involved. How did you not, especially perhaps in the political realm, how did you not feel overwhelmed? And how did you push through and say, this is a thing where I'm going to push through and make an impact here?
Do I have a choice to feel overwhelmed? I do feel overwhelmed sometimes. April 18th, for example, very recently, that was a day of getting out to the polling locations at 6 in the morning. Then we had a watch party that went on until 2 a.m. because we were just waiting for everyone to just report in, but that was extremely overwhelming because we had the numbers. We did. I'm not going to go into what I think went wrong and what could have happened elsewhere, but it's also in days where I feel overwhelmed that I find the strength to keep going. I saw that in an area that's very, very conservative. We filled, a huge banquet hall, wall to wall. I saw that people were ready for change. I saw that people have been out there, standing on intersections, that they're ready for change. When we did the, I was lucky enough to march with John Lewis, Representative John Lewis, on the January 21st march. And it was a very gross, nasty, cold, rainy morning. We had prepped for maybe 13,000 attendees. 63,000 people showed up. That was a good kind of being overwhelmed because everything that's been going on, and then I knew we're definitely ready for change, and I just have to do my part to make sure we're getting there, as small as my part may be in that journey. I just have to keep going. And this whole weekend I've just been thinking more and more about it, and what you have to realize is that even though there's these external challenges, overcoming that internal revolution and trying to figure out why you want to serve. Is it for a personal gain? Are you really just being self-serving, or are you really serving because you see value in everybody that's out there? And once you recognize that, and you're willing to carry the challenges of the kids in the inner city schools, the kids that their childhoods taken away from them, once you're willing to take their struggles on your own back, feeling overwhelmed, just kind of seems like, all right, I had one overwhelming day. Tomorrow's going to be a new day. It's going to be a better day. But you recognize and you know that what you're doing is beyond yourself. And for me, that helps me keep going. And when I really made the switch to be in this line of work, I also knew I had to take care of myself. So this would be, so I'm thinking of longevity and not just like burning out short term. So there's a good balance, and I think so far there's a good balance in trying to take care of myself so I can help take care of the world that we're a part of.
Thank you, C-Score. Just two brief things. So for those that aren't familiar, so Georgia's 6th district where John Ossoff is running, it was a jungle primaries, basically was called, where it was a free-for-all. And then a Republican and a Democrat, Ossoff, didn't get over 50%, so there's a runoff campaign between him and another person who they'll be going head-to-head June 20th in Georgia. So quick plug. The C-Score should reach out to everybody here and get you guys to call whoever you know in Georgia, and if it fits with your politics, and hopefully it fits with your politics, then I think it'd be a good thing to kind of get involved in. The other thing, really quickly, so just the next question to jump to is perhaps as a bit of a mini case study, Puneet Singh, right? So from concept. So you guys went to Boga and you had an idea that revolved around leveraging your engineering background to create something and make it fun for kids. How did you go from having that idea in your mind to actually, shipping those first 20 Lego sets of a golf bucket? And perhaps for those in the audience that are thinking of, hey, I want to be able to bring something to life, what kind of guidance can you give them from taking it from concept to mailing out a golf bucket Lego packages?
So the key to that is being very impulsive and not thinking about things through thoroughly. And all of this credit goes to Charanpreet Singh, and he, both of us, as we were talking about stuff like, we don't have enough toys, or won't it be cool, like we have Star Wars action figures, or we have all those things. And when we read, we have to read Nawab Kapoor Singh, or we have to read Banda Singh Bahadur. It's in these like really hard to read books and stuff. But the stuff that they did was like first of all true and real life, and they did much more awesome things than just playing with the stuff that we had around at home. He said we had. I actually met Charanpreet Singh in person maybe 3 times over like maybe 2 or 3 days. That's it. And most of our work was done online because we kept on calling each other and talking about Panthic issues. The process was like, let's try to see if we can make the Kaltak. And then we got the software for making Lego online. We had a 3D software that we used, and then looked at the pictures and say, this is how it was built. And that was part of the learning process for us as well, because we are looking at, this foundation was actually built first, and this was where Guru Granth Sahib or Art Granth was actually kept before Prakash and Ravinder Sahib, before the whole Takht was built, and later on floors were added by Maharaja Ranjit Singh and other Gursikhs, and then who put the gold on, and all those things was like learning as we are building. And that kind of, our original goal was not just to like sell these things. It was more of trying to make something cool just for us, and the fact that we were able to do it on a computer and we could order Lego bricks online very easily, and then we got it, and then we had to learn the process of actually designing and building something on our own. It's not, we didn't have any instructions, and we didn't know how to sort bricks. It's a hard process because the first project, the Kaltak you see there is, it was, original one was about 2200 bricks, and each, you just get lost. There's just so much stuff around, as you can see in that picture. It's once we had that, then the second task that we were focused on was building the instruction and seeing if actually people were willing to buy it. Our mission was to bring awareness or making learning Sikh history fun for everyone, for families to do. And we are not technically a non-profit, but we do not charge any. We don't take any salary from any of the cost of these kits, because the cost of these kits is only the cost of the bricks and the shipping and the packaging that we do. And any spare change that's left over goes into buying more bricks for the next set. And that was our mission, and that's like very clear in our our articles of organization that we are not going to use money for this from this project for any personal gain by any means, just to cover the cost of these kits and make them as accessible to children and adults like us as much as possible. We reached out to families that we knew, good friends of ours and not so good friends of ours, and asking them if they would be willing to support a project like this. And we wanted to test out if the market was ready for such a product, essentially. I mean, I'm not a business person, I'm just an engineering person. And we got a really good response. We got a lot of emails that this is so cool, can't wait to try it. And that was it. Then we actually had to buy all those. So 2,000 bricks times 20 is like 24,000 bricks, and we got them, and then we had no space to keep them. So we had to buy huge Lego containers to sort them and keep them, and packing them was a hassle. And we are very lucky to have a lot of youth in Maryland, thanks to Rubin these projects and stuff, who were willing to help just spend an hour or 2 hours after work to pack these kits into our biodegradable plastic bags. So we also made a commitment that we'll try to be as sustainable as possible. So that's why our boxes are all cardboard, which are biodegradable, and even the plastic packaging is we buy the biodegradable, I don't know, it's a reusable plastic, reformed plastic, PVC thing that we use. Doing this packaging, there's a lot of learning that went on, and then building the instruction and making sure that instruction actually works, and making sure that we have the history component, or the fact that this is going to be an educational project and not just simple like a build and throw thing. That was important, so we put as much tidbits of history and trivia inside instruction, so you can't miss it. And it will be just something fun that we will do. And we're looking forward to the feedback we get from our supporters. And if you want to buy it, you should go to logar.net, or you can come talk to me. I'll give you a discount.
We never got a discount.
You did.
Okay.
We're not charging you any credit card and shipping fees.
No, I'm joking. I'd just like to quickly combine two things that Aasees and Puneet said. One is just be impulsive, right? Just get started. And while he described the many steps that they had to go through, they didn't know all those steps when they got started, right? So they had the idea to do this. Okay, got to get the software. Okay, now we know how to design it. Now we got to order the bricks. And so you don't need to be super planful or strategic about some of this stuff. You can just get started with it. But I would combine that also with Aasees' comment of this is a marathon, right? Like this stuff, the biggest, the most important thing you can do is, aside from getting started, is to go in it with a long-term mentality. That I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do it at a rate that I can sustain. What's happened since the November elections is I know a lot of other people involved in the political process that have already flamed out. It's been 6 months maybe, and that's disappointing to see. And so even if it's, instead of going in, like some people spending 15 hours a week and then they give up after 3 weeks, go in it for 2 hours a week, go in it for 3 hours a week, whatever you can sustain, go in it for the long haul, and maybe over time, if it speaks to you, that 3 hours turns into 6 hours, but get started and go into it with a marathon mentality. I'd like to ask Seema, Kaur, and Rubin Singh to perhaps touch on briefly a similar thing, which is when you start to offer food pantry or Nourishment Now, or whatever experiences you've been involved in, what kind of counsel in a similar way can you give to people around just going after and getting it started in some way?
So just before I answer that, I've committed a bit of a blunder. We're actually a trio, and I can't believe that I didn't mention it sooner. But an indispensable part of our team is Harjab Singh, who has been there from literally the first day. And we do this together, really. We do this together. And he's a very important part of our team. So the three of us make this happen, with our other volunteers, of course. But to answer your question, I think, and I think the three of us all think this, that no matter what your passion is, that just like he said, you just jump in and do it. We didn't have the time. We didn't, we kept putting it off. We didn't know how to do it. We didn't know where to start. We just jumped in and then started asking people who were doing that kind of work. A lot of these people are very generous with their experiences, and that has been a huge part of our growth, leaning on organizations that are already in place that are now our partners. So even if it's helping people with just basic needs, food, even toiletries, gathering toiletries and distributing those, you can start really small and really have a lot of impact on the people in your community just surrounding you. You don't have to be huge. We're such a tiny outfit, and we hope to grow, but it's just it's a stepwise process, and I think if there's even a bit of passion behind it, you'll definitely be fruitful. And in turn, because we actually distribute government subsidized food, we can't outwardly promote Sikhi or talk about religion. But I think because we have our food pantry out of the Gurdwara, and most of our volunteers are visibly Sikhs, people just out of curiosity will ask. And that's sort of a really lucky side effect of this. I think ultimately we hope to propagate the positivity that is Sikhi and serving community. But yeah, you just have to do it. I asked Puneet what he would say, and we'll go, you just gotta do it. There's never a right time.
A part of the just do it sort of theme here is also sometimes it's sort of daunting to say, well, I'm not really sure how to do all this, because it's not easy to run a nonprofit or to run these businesses, and you may not have the expertise. That's what kind of happened with us for Nourishment Now. My friend called me and said, I know about the international aid space, and I know how to get food to different countries, but I have no idea how to run a nonprofit. Do you know? I'm like, yeah, I can help you with that. I don't know anything about getting food in other countries, but let's figure it out together. Same thing with Sailor Truck. A friend came to me and said, okay, this is my idea, but we probably need some technology, we probably need some marketing. I was like, hey, that's me. Okay, so and then we, and so it's these partnerships that you find, even if you don't have that expertise. Find somebody who does, sit down together, and then you can fill in the gaps to help each other out. And when people see that you're doing the work and they see that you're committed to it, opportunities just knock on your door. We had this big, huge event, a 100,000 meal event at the University of Maryland, and I called a bunch of these kids that I work with at the Gurdwara and said, can you help me load these trucks? So my friend Jaythir comes, he says, I'm going to bring my dad. My dad says he wants to do some seva, so he's going to come. Jaythir's dad comes, and he looks at our little storage facility and sees us struggling, and he's like, this is ridiculous. Cancel your contract, let's take all your stuff and move it to my warehouse. I have a warehouse with my business. I have plenty of empty space. I'll donate it to you. I have workers there, 9 to 5. They'll load the trucks, and consider it all a donation. And this was just like, you know, just cut our operations in half, just like that. So it's just a magic, you know. It's just, you know, when people see that that you're doing the work, and they see that you're passionate about it, and they see the results of it, opportunities just come your way. Maybe it's lose grace or whatever, who knows? But I think we all probably have been in some sort of situation like that, where we've seen that type of love come our way, and then you just take advantage of it and go from there.
Thank you. So I
think I'll ask just one last question here, and then we'll turn it over to whatever questions you all have. But Kuldeep, I'd love to get your perspective in a couple of minutes about where you see your future efforts going, or what you would like to see out of those that you've taught over the past 40 years, where you would like to see the Pantic activism go from here.
Well, Pantic activism has gone quite a bit far. A lot of youth that came out of the camp, they have started organizing own camps, retreats, seminars, and that's really getting far. Like first camp that shot out from this camp was the Tennessee camp, where the youth got trained, some adults who participated in it, they got involved, and they have copied all the programs that were at the camp, and started their own camp with similar programs. And that is activism.
from here, if you look at the next 15 years, what would you like to see?
Next 15 years, I think you guys have to carry out the program, because all the people who came out of the camp, they have to carry out, and a lot of new things are coming up, new technology, and that has speeded up many of the things that were supposed to be speeded up. We used to work very hard in getting our program done. Now it is much simpler with the computer technology, and the youth are working together to do all that. And I believe that more initiated 6 will be produced by the camps in future. The first camp, when I look at it, most of the youth that were participating in the first camp were clean-shaven. They failed to produce, failed to recite good morning without an accent. They all had the American accent to recite good morning. And all the literature that were distributed at that time were in Roman script. Now the things have changed. All the youth have learned the regular script, Punjabi script, Gurmat script, and their pronunciation has improved a lot. And actually it is the very correct pronunciation. We used to give marks for the pronunciation. Now everybody has good pronunciation, so that marks is got eliminated. In the Kirtan competition, we always had marks for the pronunciation. Always has marks for the dress up of a person. Marks on the translation of the shabdas. So those things have changed over the years, and they will further change with the passage of time as the youth are concentrating on it. The youth that came out of the camp, they were not very much Punjabi speaking. They were English speaking. Now they not only learned Punjabi themselves, but are teaching their own children. And that's very encouraging, that the coming up children know more Gurmukhi, and the parents know more about Punjabi language, and that means the understanding of the Vani will be more. And that's what I anticipate in the future.
Thank you, Uncle G. I think two brief comments and then think of your questions. One is, I know for myself, often will think about and look around and say, oh my goodness, this friend of mine I grew up with cut their hair, or these things are happening today that are discouraging. But if you look at Uncle's response that talks about over the past 45 years how he sees things having progressed, I think that's a good frame of reference for us to have, and gives us hope for the next 15, 20, 30 years about what we can do going forward. Second brief comment, I think Rubin Singh's comment around things just happen. Partnerships just come up. You know, Retreat 2009 in Mandeep's basement, when Breed Singh from Florida was there, we started talking about stuff, and the Sun Network started. And there's 10 other examples like that. So, it's just this notion of getting started and don't think through it too much, and things just happen, and forward momentum just happens. I know we got started a little bit late, so we'll cut to whatever questions you have, and then summarize quickly from there. But think about, maybe it's an area you're interested in getting involved in. You have a question for one of them about how you can involve, or it's an idea you had that you want to share. What questions do y'all have?
Hi, Kuldeep. The question is for Seema and Rubin Singh. For the food, this is just a question out of curiosity, because when I heard the statistics, I'm very surprised and shocked. I cannot imagine people being hungry in the United States. What part of the, let's say, the working population, which is a part of those statistics, has been facing food insecurity, are capable of doing work but just don't work because they don't want to? Like, I don't need the exact number. Right. What I'm trying to think is, if there's someone who can work, I'll give them food maybe for like 1 week, but not after that week. You know what I'm saying? They'll just get dependent on.
So
on the, again, I kind of made mention, I think we were in the same group together, right? So regardless of the actions of the other person, whether they are taking advantage of the system or something like that, that's not of our concern. We're going to do what we think is right. So, we're still going to just do what's right. We serve out of the Gurdwara, so anybody's welcome to come at any time and take food. That's a decision we made. The larger organizations that run food pantries and these types of organizations, they have, you have to bring in your W-2s, you have to bring in your pay stubs, you have to report all this information. But since we're out of the Gurdwara, anybody can come at any time. They can pull up in a Porsche if they'd like and say, I need food. And we shouldn't also be so quick to judge. We had one gentleman, I think Seema helped him, he came up in a Mercedes, so kind of made conversation with him. He recently was divorced, lost everything. He lived in his car. That's the only position he had, right? So we try not to make assumptions of who we're serving also.
You had a question.
This is for Aasees Kaur. So what type of change have you noticed in the schools and in the orphan, like with the foster children and stuff? What kind of changes have you seen so far doing the work that you've done?
So with the foster kids, right now we're actually short of counselors, and it hurts me so much that a lot of the youth in our community, we limit ourselves to just giving our time to Gurmat camps and not other camps also during the summer. So if anyone wants to come down to Georgia for a week in the middle of nowhere at another YMCA camp setting, see me afterwards. Has to be a guy. But the changes that we're seeing is that, so in some cases, let's say, two of my siblings are in the foster care system with me. They get adopted, I don't. That leads to resentment, right? That leads to anger, and you just don't know what to do because you're left behind when you're already separated, and then they get adopted, and you didn't. So the goal of our time together with them is to help them overcome the challenges that they face every 51 other weeks of the year. And sometimes it's very difficult. One time it took me 3 days to get 2 of the brothers to crack a smile. It's hard for them to trust me. It's hard for them to trust each other. And so you have to make yourself really strong to be in that space to help them overcome their challenges. And then recently we, took the kids out to a Hawks game, and both of their foster families, they brought their brothers, and they had a really good time together. So the goal of our week together with them is to help them overcome their emotional challenges and just give them the tools that they need to help them get through the rest of the year, or until we can plan events based on our funding or whatever the logistics may be. And we just try to help as much as we can to keep them connected. That's our goal, to keep all the siblings connected.
I just want to ask, what week of the year do you run the camp? Or month?
June. Yeah. It's coming up shortly. But if someone's interested, you have to do a background check and formal training and all of that stuff, because you'll be working with a very sensitive group of people.
Mandeep, you can do 3 camps back to back.
So I have a question, and I think it'll apply mostly to the Aasees, because they're more younger, crowdish. I don't know. You tell me out. But so Facebook, super friendly, internet people is what I'm looking for. Exactly.
So these guys are more technology savvy than anyone that knows me knows that.
So regardless, so I guess in terms of activism, I know just from watching things, Bernie Sanders' campaign was a really good example as well of people who showed up online but didn't show up in person. So when you're talking about getting people motivated, I feel like more younger people are, trapped from behind a screen. They really have all the heart, but they don't know how to bridge the gap. So do you have any advice for people who may be struggling with that, who see terrible things happening on the news, but aren't sure, oh my goodness, I don't know if I can really go to this place with all these people that I don't know, but I feel really strong about. Do you have any advice for bridging that gap?
If you feel so strongly about something and you're going to go to a march, if it's a Black Lives Matter march or whatever else it may be, you're definitely going to be surrounded with like-minded people, and you'll meet with friends. I've made friends with people that I never thought I'd be friends with. This guy who was a bicycling activist, but because of him, we now have bicycling lanes. And it's just, if you go in with the right mindset, you'll help yourself get comfortable in a new setting. And for example, our strategy is that we're hoping college kids are coming back into town, and we registered, we actually had to file a lawsuit to register more people, but we were able to register almost 6,000 new people for this June 20th election, and we're hoping that they're all going to be back in town, all of these young kids coming back from college, and they'll vote. And we put in, if you don't even want to show up to the place, everyone's already got a vote by mail. It's not an absentee. So we've given as many resources as we can to help everybody, especially the younger crowd, because we do believe they hold the power to make the difference in this coming election, to change that. And we completely changed strategy since April 18th till June 20th to bring in the younger crowd.
What other questions? We have about just 10 minutes or so.
I just wanted to thank all of you for everything that you guys do, and that you're continuing to do. It serves as an inspiration, and just sharing your stories. I appreciate that. It really is an inspiration, and it's Gurbani in action, and I think that's the best thing about it. And thank you very much.
I just wanted to make like an interesting observation I was noticing is that we do this a lot too, like even in like my field of work, where kind of to Amber's point, where we talk a lot about like millennials and passion of millennials, but then they're kind of stuck behind a screen and maybe there's not a lot of follow through. And it's just an interesting cycle that keeps reappearing, because it would be silly for any older person to really think that that was only ever a problem of millennials, and it's just a different interface. So now it is the social media screens. Like 50 years ago, it was the churches and the temples and the synagogues where there was like advertisements going on about different impactful events, and everybody's hearing it and everybody's feeling it in their churches or their synagogues or their gorgadas. But really only about 5 or 10% actually go out and do something, right? Like this has been the cycle of just humanity in and of itself, and it's something interesting to see, like with Sikhi or Sikhs, is that there's never been an emphasis on the quantity of people. Like one Sikh could overcome 1,000, you know, or like you only need one really committed one to make such a huge impact. And that inspires maybe one other, but the power of one is really tenfold. And because it can, I think, get discouraging at times to feel like there aren't a lot of people involved, because that's what seems to validate a program and the success of a program. But really it is about the work that they do, not how many of them in the end do it.
Maybe one or two more questions. Feel free to
This is a question, a very important question. How was it like working in Aasees' office?
She's only asking me that because she wants me to say Aasees' office.
But serious question. I might have two questions, actually.
Pick one.
Pick one? Okay.
I answered one.
Okay. My question is, how has Seva enriched your life as a Sikh?
Anybody?
I think that for me, personally, that it has showed me how little I'm actually doing and how much more I'm capable of doing. And I think that's pushing me to try to find more to do. Whether it's time or resources or, you know, volunteering somewhere else, it's shown me that I'm not doing anything yet.
We all have so much potential and we have so much greatness within ourselves that if we just take that one first small step, we'll be able to accomplish a lot more. And like Seema Benji said, I have a huge list of things that I want to start working on, other topics that I want to start addressing, especially within our own community that currently have a lot of stigma around them. And it's just a matter of now, you know, well, like you said, every time is the right time, but taking that dive right into that aspect too and just putting myself in there. And then just being able to do the seva helps me realize and really feel a part of the creation. I try to do as much as I can, and realizing how large everything else is compared to us and the part we play in this creation.
There's, oh, go ahead.
The seva, I think the greatest seva I thought is to join with the like-minded Sikhs who are Guru-oriented, and that was the thought right from the beginning, ever since we started the camp, just to all the teachers who are Gursikhs and Gurmats, just gather them together and create an atmosphere, create an environment in which the Sikhi principles can overpower and convince everybody that a Sikh is humble and Sikh is tolerant. That's that type of atmosphere we need to create. I wanted to see actually that all Sikhs, whether they have 1% Sikh in them or 100% Sikh in them, they should live together. They should be able to support everybody. Whether a Sikh belongs to a certain Jatha, is a Sikh, and they should still have respect for the Sikh empire, and they should consider that to be the most important document. And that was the principle in this camp, right from the beginning, that that principle should be followed, so that everybody can live in peace, and there is one respected document that they believe in. And that kind of atmosphere we wanted to create here. Personally, I cannot influence, I cannot change anybody, and I have not changed anybody. I wanted to change myself, and I am still struggling to change myself. So that's what my comment to say. Thank you.
I think that's as good as a closing panel statement as we're going to get, just in the interest of time. Wanted to mention two other quick things. The first is, we talked about it being a marathon, not a sprint. There's a lot of different ways to get involved. There's a number of sites like Volunteer Match, Catch a Fire, Taproot, where you can just go in and you can search, and it'll say, hey, you just want to go out for a day and volunteer doing something. And it can match you with a number of different opportunities. Like in Detroit, I searched the day before retreat, and there were 63 different things you could get involved in. And you could do it for a week, a month, 3 hours. So there's various ways to get involved, even if you're not at the point where you want to go and start an organization. Just to Puneet's point, get started. And then there's ones you can go deeper on. So there's a couple. These are just examples. They're, if you clearly search for a topic and you add the word activism or volunteer, there's a ton of stuff that you'll find. But a couple that I've been tracking, and Center for Constitutional Rights is great. There's a number of people. For instance, it's hard to find how you can get active if you feel passionate about the fact that the U.S. policy on drones doesn't reconcile with you. They're a great organization that focuses on that and a number of other things. You can see mass incarceration in 13, documentary on Netflix. anti-slavery, so this just so happened to be our economics topic, right? And I was looking at it before retreat. One of the really good programs that antislavery.org has is around starting up a group in your university around trying to address child labor and slave labor. And I think Bulbricker was mentioning that this happened at Ohio State, where they took on Wendy's for this very thing. So antislavery.org, there's a number of these are just a few. And then I'd make one last pitch on going local. So just a couple that I've been involved in, and I'll quickly plug. But so the ACLU is, I think, a very strong organization that any of us can pretty easily get involved in. They've started a new campaign after November 8th around people power and something called Freedom Cities, and that's immigration rights and a number of other things. But the ACLU.org is a really easy way to start getting involved. If you're so interested, Indivisible is something I'm very passionate about around, and that's something very easy to get involved in. If it's about fighting against the policies that are coming out of this administration, super easy way to get involved, and it's not just about going to marches, but it's about engaging your congresspeople, and it's a very easy way to get involved. And then the last quick plug, with respect to if you have ideas for Sikh activism in particular, this one network was started with the idea that over time, it would start with Sikh organizations, but over time it would be a platform for this flurry of Sikh activism, right? So these independent ideas of a person in their college dorm room that wanted to do something for the Sikh world. And that's why this one network exists. So if you just have a small idea for a project, my plug is come and we'll help you make it happen. Last quick thing, it was meant to be a longer exercise. We're going to do the 3-minute version of the exercise. But before we do, I just wanted to tee it up with a very quick video.
Crashing, hit a wall. Right now I need a miracle. Hurry up now, I need a miracle. Stranded, reaching out. I call your name, but you're not around. I say your name, but you're not around. I need it, I need it, I need you right now. Yeah, I need you right now. So don't let me, don't let me, don't let me down. I think I'm losing my mind now. It's in my head, darling. I hope that you'll be here when I need you the most. So don't let me, don't let me, don't let me down. Don't let me down. I need you, I need you, I need you right now. Yeah, I need you right now. Don't let me, don't let me, don't let me down. I think I'm losing my mind now. It's in my head, darling. I hope that you'll be here.
You can lift the weight of caring by doing. Visit statefarmsneighborhoodofgood.com to volunteer in your community.
So the last quick exercise is, if I could ask you to all take out your phones for one quick second. And just the quick version of this exercise is flip over to your calendar, and if you don't use your calendar, you can flip over to composing an email.
Or no.
and it's an optional exercise, but I would just ask that for one night this upcoming week, whether it's like just a time where you can actually think about something for 5 minutes, 8 p.m. on Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday, just write yourself a quick note in your calendar entry and say, here's something I want to look into, or something I might want to get involved in. And just do it in the course of the next 5 or so days, schedule it so that it's a time where you can take action if you're so inclined. And say, I really want to look into this thing. This is what's on my mind. And then it'll be a reminder for you to actually do that at that time. In closing, I'd like to really thank the panel for coming up here and sharing their stories in a very open and personal way. Thank them for the seva that they do and the activism that they embody. Again, to Rubin Singh's point about love being in action, I think they're demonstrating that. So I think we'd all like to thank them for that. Bole Soneha.
I just wanted to share with everybody, I'm a product of Tennessee Gurmat Camp, and for that I owe everything to Kuldeep Singh Uncle for training my own mentors so well that they have taught me in ways to really embody and try to apply those Sikh values and keep myself grounded and really put seva, love, compassion, and humility, and try to just put that in my everyday life. And none of this wouldn't have been possible if it weren't for the seva Uncle Ji did, and if it weren't for weekends like this. And this has just been like a really good mental break. And I'm really now looking forward to Tennessee camp in less than like 4 weeks. So everything that I know I am today, it's because of spaces like this, and I hope we can all keep coming back and just building ourselves up through our own center.
That's it. For this session, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. We're going to take